And then you had Ed McBain, who made up a mythical New York, you know. He was writing about, what do you call it, Isola, whatever it was. And he had that whole, you know, we all knew it was New York, but the 87th precinct was really wherever it was. And then you have Harlan and Janet Ivanovich in very different ways, writing about authentic New Jersey.
Northern Jersey.
You know, yeah, I mean, Harlan's new book, among other things, is a fabulous portrait of New Jersey, and he has some great stuff to say about Newark.
Yeah, to me, and I recognize this early on, you know, in my first exposures to crime fiction, the sense of place and the, you know, the joy of, you know, of the reader, right, in encountering books that have, you know, that palpable sense of place. It's just great, and you know, I think that's one of the real pleasures of this whole genre, because so many great novels in this genre depend on and exploit so well that sense of place. I think
the landscape of the book really matters. Well, as P.D. James is one of your idols, you know that she has said, in fact, said on this very program back in 1995, that all of her books are inspired only by a sense of place, that she has to see something, and that somehow sparks her off into whatever she's going to write about.
I actually think that when she writes about urban poverty in London, when she writes about the East End of London, and she writes about that kind of grinding urban poverty, that is so moving. And you know, she writes about those stairwells, and you can smell them, you know, when she's writing. It's just amazing. It is just amazing.
Well, but she's also versatile, because she has written very well about other spots, you know, the north, you know, the sea coast on the North Sea and all.
I think a lot of people who think of her, you know, one of the things they might think of is, you know, kind of a dramatic or a lonely or, you know, somehow romantic, you know, English landscape. But to me, it's, you know, it's the surprising bits when she's writing about London and she's writing about, you know, urban grit. She does that as well as any, you know, kind of hard-boiled noir writer.
She does it very well. She's also like Linda in the sense that you can get these surprise nuggets of, you know, landscape local history in her books that you're just not normally, you know, prepared for. Well, have you given some thought? You're 3 books in, thinking about presumably or working on your 4th.
Number 4.
Are you beginning to feel a bit of a shackle? Are you getting that impulse to write something totally different in a different voice?
It's interesting. You know, I have...
You're at the magic mark. 4 books is about where it starts with almost all authors.
In the last couple of years, I've contributed short stories to a number of collections, and I've actually just edited one of my own, and to which I also contributed. And that was, you know, those were great experiences, each one of those, because each one of those was written, they're very different. Only, you know, I have 1 March short story, but, you know, all of them are quite different voices. So it was a great education. You know, I feel like I learned a lot as a writer. Every time I write a short story, I learn a lot. And that gave me some outlet for, you know, trying new things. I do have a number of ideas for standalones. But my 4th book will be a March book, but I will be taking March out of New York because a good portion of this book will take place in Los Angeles.
Well, and you're not unfamiliar with that. You're the editor of one of the books in this Akashic series. This is Wall Street Noir?
Wall Street Noir. It's coming out in June.
I think that's fascinating. Each of these books has explored a particular city.
Yes.
But with New York, we've had, I know we had, was it Manhattan Noir?
Manhattan and Brooklyn Noir, which started the series.
Started it, right.
And Shira is doing Bronx Noir.
Oh, is she?
Yes. And Bob Knightley is doing Queens Noir.
Wow.
Yeah. So New York will be well explored.
Well, it will.
Borough by borough.
Yeah, which I find interesting because most of the rest of them, I mean, there's San Francisco Noir and there's Chicago Noir. I think there was a London Noir even. There's Washington, Miami.
Yes, there is.
There's a whole lot.
Yes, and I think Johnny's list has some more European. I think
they're beginning noir to work on that. So I mean, I think it's an absolutely terrific idea.
It is, and Wall Street Noir is a little bit of a departure because you know, the other books are, you know, Johnny conceived of these as sort of crime fiction travelogues to that city. With Wall Street, you know, we sort of look at Wall Street really as what it is, which is kind of a global city unto itself. So we have stories that are set in the traditional, you know, downtown, you know, traditional financial district, some that are set in the new financial districts of Midtown and Greenwich, Connecticut, and then we go to Main Street, USA, and then we go out to the world to Shanghai and Bangkok and Honduras. So, we explore Wall Street, in all of its manifestations. We have a couple of historical stories in there and a graphic story. It's a lot of fun.
Sounds like a lot of fun. So it really is a global money book.
It is a global money book.
Fascinating. Did Dave List write a story for
David
that?
did not. I would have loved for him to.
Sure you would.
But David had scheduling problems.
I do find that his interest in the origins of modern finance, is really fascinating. I was very taken. It's not a subject in which I am particularly comfortable or expert. I tend to duck the whole. I'm not numerate, but I did find that his Conspiracy of Paper really
was
had some.
Great.
And Robert Goddard actually wrote a very good book, the name of which I can't quite remember, The Sea or something, which is the same thing. And it came out very, very close in time to David's book. Another example of that kind of zeitgeist you were talking about, but also about the run-up to the South Sea bubble and the Hanoverians coming to the throne and the origins of the stock market and all the rest of it. But I thought also David's book about tulips and monopolies in Holland.
Then The Coffee Trader.
Right.
That was a wonderful book.
That's the same. No, that isn't the same one. That's the third one. Well, whatever. Anyway, it's been fascinating talking to you.
It's been great.
Thank you so much for coming to see us.
It's a pleasure.
And I thank all of you for joining us on this episode of the Criminal Calendar.